This is the Guided Podcast, an interview with the fly fishing industry's top guides and brand ambassadors. On this podcast, we cover topics such as the guiding lifestyle, conservation, different fisheries globally, and gear and technology to improve your game. I'm your show host, Greg Keenan. Before we begin today's show, let's thank our sponsors. Scientific Anglers is the leader in producing the world's best fly lines for over 75 years. Scientific Anglers have set new industry standards with their SA Amplitude family of fly lines, both in technology and performance. See the difference for yourself today at scientificanglers.com. Show your show support and follow us on Instagram at Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Now let's begin. Welcome to Guided. Today's guest, George Daniels. George, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries, George. Super excited you're here. Big name in fly fishing and in the trout world and everything like that. So I want to jump right into it. And when I was doing my research, I read that you started fly fishing at age 6, or was it like a young age, like 6 or 8? Yeah. Walk us through your journey.
Yeah. Just in short, I grew up in just the middle of nowhere in northern Pennsylvania. It was a little village. I mean, there actually are still villages, but this one is called Germania. But long story short, I had this little beautiful brook trout stream that flowed past my house. It was a kids only section, and I was the only kid in the village that fished. And my father, we were a 1-car family. My father was always out working. So basically, I kind of was stuck in that geographic area with this trout stream flowing past. And even though my father definitely introduced me into fishing, he didn't have a whole lot of patience. So basically, I spent most of my childhood just, figuring things out on my own. But I think the environment kind of created the anger. So, so for, the first 14 years of my life, I grew up with the trout stream literally 30 feet from my house. Awesome.
Like a river to yourself. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then that ultimately led into the guiding and take it from there. Like, what transitioned after that? You're 14 years old now, or 14 years later? So,
yeah, 14, 15. Yeah. We moved into the central part of the state. My dad relocated with jobs. And that's when I became familiar with a guy named Joe Humphreys. Joe taught the angling program at Penn State, but bought his book, just kind of idolized him, and basically just kind of read up on everything that he and George Harvey wrote. And then finally, at one point, I was able to meet Joe at a fly shop. And long story short, bugged the hell out of him for about a year and a half, and he finally gave in to take me fishing. And then when we went fishing, he took me under his wing, and we kind of really developed a great friendship and relationship. And that's, at age 16, when that happened, that's when I started getting some like formal instruction. So Joe started giving me some good instruction. And then as soon as I got Greg, when you get some good information, like your learning curve, like when you try to do it on your own, either like watching videos, reading books on your own, it takes a little bit to get from point A to point B. But if you have someone with a good set of eyes that can give you like immediate feedback, I mean, that learning curve just quickly turns. And what Joe did gave me that feedback. And as soon as I got done with a few lessons, started seeing huge improvements, I just became just big on instruction. So I started just working part-time jobs and hiring as many of the local guides and instructors like within like a 3.5, 4 hour radius just to take lessons from. And that kind of just got me, just instilled just a love affair for fly fishing and education. So, did grad school, and then went into guiding. I just wanted to work in the industry, wanted to do fly fishing shows, got into the competition scene a little bit, competed for for Fly Fishing Team USA, did a little bit of coaching for them, coached the USU team for a number of years. And then, been guiding ever since and doing this trade shows and doing some writing and so forth. And then luckily just about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was given an opportunity to come back to Penn State, where I did my graduate work at, to teach the angling program that Joe Humphreys taught for a number of years. So that's what I've been doing for the last year. Still guiding, basically full time, on and off, depending on the season. But it's basically spending my time between teaching at Penn State and guiding on the side.
Wow, how rewarding is that? You guys hustled, you did it. Now you're full circle back to where Joe is. I mean, that must be feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when I read his book when I was 13, like I read that he's teaching at Penn State, and I just thought, man, that would be like the coolest job in the world. And eventually, it was never. I was always working directly towards it, but it was always kind of on the forefront of my thoughts. And then finally, everything just came together. Last year when they were looking for an instructor, and my name came up, and I was given the job. But no, it's the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, I've done some pretty cool things in the industry, but to be able to teach the angling program that my mentor and his mentor taught for him is, it's really cool to be part of that amazing Pennsylvania angling tradition.
No doubt. And it sounds like you have a passion for teaching, and again, you've written some books, and you've written some books on Euro nymphing. You've written some books on what was the other one? Strip sets.
Yep.
And whatnot. So let's talk about Euro nymphing. Like, what are some of the ways? Like, I know it's slowly, a lot of the industry, a lot of the people that I know in the trout world are really focused on it, and it's gaining a bigger mass or a bigger following, and particularly recently with the people staying home and whatnot. So where I want to go with that is, like, walk us through, like, how are people effectively Euro nymphing, or how are some ways people can get started in Euro nymphing, because it's always a topic that people want to know about.
Yeah, Euro nymphing it is a very simplified version. I mean, when people think about Euro nymphing, they think it's a newer technique where, I do have to make this fact that it's not a new technique. I mean, people have been like basically nymphing without indicator since the dawn of nymphing. Basically when Skews over in England stuck his middle finger up to the angling world and said, I'm going to sink a fly, to Halford and that whole crew. So essentially, like, Skews was like the first one to truly do the Euro nymphing techniques, and it has evolved a little bit. But today with competition, you can say whatever you want about competition, but one of the beautiful things that competition does, it creates innovation. Just like bass fishing, the new gizmos, the gadgets, the lures. I mean, the way that these anglers catch fish, the efficiency is increased every year. And basically, what traditional tight line nymphing was, it has been kind of like redefined and reformed into this modern version that we call Euro nymphing. But the beautiful thing about this, it doesn't really involve indicators. It doesn't involve split shot, even though there's definitely a ton in place for those tools. But what that does, it takes a lot of the hassle of trying to cast, and then also it avoids a lot of the tangles typical of indicators and split shot. But what it is just you have this basically very thin line. I mean, and sometimes all you're doing is just using all monofilament. So basically, you're keeping as much line leader off the water as possible. You're high sticking, traditional high sticking techniques. Mm-hmm. But what makes this technique so effective is how thinned out these lines are. Whether you're using like an SA competition nymph line, or even just going straight 10-pound test monofilament, the whole idea is that the less mass you have in the guides and outside the rod tip, the straighter the line, the more direct line of contact you have with your nymph. And somewhere on your leader, you have this thing called a cider. There's actually colored wax that you can kind of coat onto your leader at any point, or you can use colored monofilament, like, say, for example, like an absolute tricolor cider that SA makes, something in those lines. But basically, it just provides a direct line of contact. The casting is incredibly easy. Most of the time, it's nothing more than just a flip of the wrist. And you make a cast, you keep the rod tip up for the most part, you keep your cider off the water, and then you kind of just lead the flies, just looking for any hesitation or stopping of the cider. And anytime that thing hesitates or stops, you set the hook. But it's a very great technique, because what makes the Euro approach great compared to, like, say, for example, like indicator techniques, again, not the bash indicators, because I use those quite a bit, but when you are fishing with indicators, what we all know as anglers is that when trout are masters of efficiency, meaning they are positioned where the greatest amount of food is, where they, for input, basically. And when those fish are not active, one of the best ways to catch a fish is with the European nymphing approach, because unlike with an indicator where you have this surface drag, basically this indicator that's on the surface, whether it's a dry fly or a manufactured indicator, the moment you have that large diameter object coming in contact with the faster speed currents on the surface, it's going to start creating some drag and some pull with the weight your flies in the bottom. With Euro nymphing, the only drag that's occurring is where your tippet, and that usually your tip is 4, 5, and often 6x tippet. So the only thing that's touching the surface currents is that smaller diameter, and as a result, it just allows those flies to drop so quick and so fast, and it just allows those flies to get down deep in that strike zone where trout spend the majority of their time feeding.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. So what type of, when we talk about this in the zones and in the drag and all that, what type of water are we reading for? Like, what's ideal nymphing water?
Before people would always say, pocket water, broken water, but anymore these days, everything is nymphing water, in all honesty. But, if you're going to start off and get into this technique, one of the best ways is to get in this, I would say like a fast riffle or, a heavy run or pocket water, places where water surface area is disturbed. You can get relatively close to the fish. Fish are not exceptionally picky. And then when the fly is drifting, the fish have to make a quick decision. But typically, like, people think about nymphing in like faster broken pocket waters, but in all honesty, the way that we've refined this technique using even like really, really long leaders to really long tippets, you can use this European nymphing technique in basically every water type available. And that's what makes this technique so good. It has applications for every bit of water that you can encounter on the stream.
When we look at everything that you guys are doing and everything that you're doing with your guiding and whatnot, like what are some of the tactics and tools that you use to put clients on fish?
Well, definitely, I definitely use the European nymphing technique a lot of times. When people come to me, I do the guiding, but usually people come to me for more instruction. And even though there might be better opportunities for, say, for example, like dry dropper, dry fly opportunities, or even streamers, I do a lot of work with the nymphing game. But, to get people in the fish, obviously the Euro approach is very good. And what is really good for, beginners, and what's good for even older people with shoulder problems, physical problems, children that don't have a lot of power. What makes these rods that we use in European nymphing is the difference between like these European nymphing rods and traditional action rods. Traditional action rods require mass. You need 15, 20, 25 feet of fly line outside the rod tip to create enough mass or bend in that rod to effectively load the rod. These rods that they have developed for European nymphing rods, because we're using such thin out lines or basically long leaders, it's almost like a tenkara rod, but with guides. But these rods can basically load with minimal amount of mass and very little power. So unlike a traditional cast where often you have to, accelerate hard with the forearm and snap the wrist, these rods require nothing more than just a flip of the wrist. So they are incredibly easy to cast. Incredibly easy to cast. And what makes these rods so good with the European nymphing is that they are incredibly sensitive compared to a traditional action fly rod. When you flick your cast out there with that sighter, what's so cool about these rods is that those rods with that softer tips, it'll telegraph. It allows like an interplay. You'll actually see your line and leader just like dancing and twitching on the water. And that is showing you exactly what your flies are doing. Your flies are not just dragging on the bottom, but they're drifting with the current, they're bouncing, they're lifting. And every little movement or change of direction that nymph makes, this leader or this sighter with that softer action rod tip, it'll tell you exactly what's going on. And all you're looking for is just a quick little jump or a little hesitation, and you set the hook. So unlike indicator techniques where sometimes, where the indicator may go down or it may hesitate or twitch, and people say, well, was that a fish yet or no? With these rods, because of how sensitive they are, most of the time there's absolutely no guessing work whatsoever. Mm-hmm. When the fish strikes, that thing shoots, it hesitates, it's almost an initial, just a quick reaction. So to get people on the fish early on, and also to get them excited about fly fishing, the Euro approach is definitely one of I think the best approaches to do so.
Yeah, no doubt. So, George, you also said you were involved with competition fly fishing. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. No, it was a good run. 2005, I did a qualifier for the Fly Fishing Team USA. And just long story short, went in the World Championships, had a couple of real good years, had some good finishes. But, I kind of got burnt out. Fly fishing was not for me. But one of the things I loved about the competition thing was, it's just like anything else in any aspect of life. You surround yourself with some of the best people or the best peers in any industry, and you're going to learn and you're going to get a lot better. And it's also going to want you to push yourself further to expand your knowledge and also expand your skill set. So, being on that team for a handful of years and competing with guys like Lance Egan, Devin Olson, and so forth, it was great. It was just a great experience. My learning curve shot up immensely. And then also it was just so cool to travel and just fish international waters, see different cultures, see different people, and learn about their techniques that they use on their home water. So it was just a great run. And then I ended up coaching for a couple of years. And to be honest with you, even though competition was fun, I learned so much more coaching both the adults and the youth team, because when you're competing, you're kind of focused on yourself. You're watching some other anglers, but mostly you're just kind of focused on yourself. What was so awesome about coaching was I was able to walk up and down the banks, watch my guys, but also watch some of the best anglers from other teams, like the Czechs, the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, all these, and just watching like the best in the game do what they do best. Man, it was amazing. Just seeing how they got things rigged up, how they made their presentation. So for me, that is what I miss. I don't miss the competition itself, but I greatly miss surrounding myself with great people and just being in that type of environment. It is just, it's very addicting. And I still almost get withdrawal once in a while when I hear the guys are going over to the World Championship. So I do miss it.
Nice. I love that. Super authentic. George, it's funny when you were over there and you said you were watching like the Czechs and the French and all that sort of stuff. You picked up stuff like, was the techniques like somewhat like, were they completely different than what we were doing, here in North America, or is it like European is completely on a different playing field? For fishing?
I would say they were on a different playing field like years ago, but that separation has been cut. Okay. What I will say is this. What I would say is we have great anglers in the U.S. A lot of the Czechs in Europe, they have great competitive anglers. And what I mean by that is this, is when you watch like the best in the game, they don't do anything fancy, but it's pure efficiency, pure accuracy. So what I mean is that they can make a cast, 97 out of 100 times accurately in one presentation or in one spot, and be able to be accurate 97% of the time, and they can do it with speed. So basically, they're not doing anything better or grander than what we were in the States, but these anglers do so many more competitions. Like the Czechs, for example, have competitions like every single week. They have, so when they do these comps, I mean, they already have like the World Championships. They might already have anywhere from like 20 to maybe 35, 40 comps already under their belt. So it's conditioning, basically. It's like running. So I think they're at that point, they were just more well conditioned and more well trained and efficient than what we were. In the U.S. with the youth team for, right during my time and right after, I mean, those kids started doing well. And then a guy named Paul Bork and a friend of mine, Lance Welp, those guys coached the youth team to several gold medal championships. So our youth team is really strong. And our adult team has medaled in the last couple of years, and there's still a lot of room for improvement. But we're starting to get a little bit better. But we just don't do as many comps. And
yeah, exactly.
You can it's like playing pickup basketball. Yeah. I mean, but until you do like official reps and you get into that mindset, because when you're fishing for fun, that's one thing. But when you're under the gun for fishing for 3 hours, you have a short beat of water, and you have to strategically work that water to the best of your ability. Just showing up 2 or 3 times a year to a competition is not going to give you that mental focus, that mindset needed to achieve a gold medal standard that a lot of the other teams do have.
Yeah. Super well said. Couldn't agree more. And it would be kind of neat to see that expanded. You know what I mean? Here in North America. I think that would be definitely neat to see that expanded. So hopefully it does. George, where I want to go with this now is let's talk about your current guiding and what you're doing right now. It's fall. What are you hitting? What are you guys targeting? What's going on out there?
Right in central Pennsylvania, we have low water. I mean, we have like historic lows. So right now we're in major drought conditions. I'm not even doing much guiding. I'm kind of giving the fish a breather. I'm doing a few trips, but in all honesty, even the good anglers right now, we're struggling. I mean, it is, you can't even walk into the water without setting, smoke signals and alarms, 30, 40 yards upstream. So for right now, I've been just doing some early morning, trips. There's a few tricos that are happening. Mm-hmm. The terrestrial fishing has been really fantastic because of our drought conditions. It has basically, I've never seen as many ants, beetles, and hoppers along the stream bank as I had this year, just because of the drought conditions. So the beetle fishing has been really good, to say the least. But all in all, I'm just kind of hoping for some rain, and then hopefully, here in the next month, starting like mid-October, going into like probably December, is when I don't do so much guiding, but is the muskie season in this area. And that's, to be honest with you, I love the nymphing. I love, trout, but when you do trout 200 days a year, it's something different. It is nice. And I tell you, currently, like muskie is like my drive. Like, I bought a boat specifically, not to guide out, but I just bought a boat specifically just for my own selfish needs. So I am super stoked and just getting ready, getting my flies ready and my equipment ready to do some muskie fishing this fall.
Awesome. No, that's awesome, buddy. It's funny when, when you have those opportunities, just like us here in British Columbia, we just, it's salmon season as well. And I'm exactly like you. It's trout season and all year long. And then boom, it's salmon season, steelhead season, and it's switch to the flick. You know what I mean? Your brain just switches over. It's like, oh, you're passionate about it. So I love that. So for sure. Anything you can tell us going forward, George?
Going forward, as in
with what's going on with what's going on with you guys, what's going on? Anything you got coming down the pipe that we should be aware about? New books?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on. I'm currently working on a dry fly book. I'm doing. I'm working with Jay Nichols, who's done some great work with he just worked with Blind Chocolate to get some video work done for his supplement, his book Game Changer. He did Landon Mayer's short game, but we have a tie-in / technical or nymphing video. So I'm going to show you how to tie like 6 of my favorite nymphs and show you some of the techniques to use those nymphs on the water. And then in the coming years, hopefully next year or two, we're going to do like 2 full-fledged nymphing videos. So I'm starting to dive a little bit more into the video world right now to provide some content. But yeah, so I'm really stoked about the video, and hopefully that will be coming out sometime around Christmas, maybe early next year. So be on the lookout for that. The dry fly book it's going to be about 2 years before that's released. But no, it's, I have some articles coming out for fly fishermen, one coming out for Fly Fusion, I think later this fall, and just focusing on my teaching at Penn State and, spending time with the family. And that's kind of all I'm doing these days.
Awesome, buddy. Love it all. You're full of knowledge. Thank you. So, you know what, George, any final words?
No, it was great to be on the podcast, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and your listeners.
Yeah, no worries. So anytime, George, for sure. Listeners, I want to thank you, and George, I want to thank you as well. You've been listening to Guided. You've been listening to the Guided Podcast, sponsored by Scientific Anglers. If you like this podcast episode, please let us know and leave a review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And remember, subscribe to the Fly Fishing Insider podcast to get even more episodes of both Guided and the Fly Fishing Insider each week. See more at flyfishinginsiderpodcast.com.